Okay, good afternoon, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee. Councillor Wilson has kindly joined me in the chamber to keep me company today. Pleasure. He's waded his way through the rain and the wind from Port Glasgow to be here. Okay, so item 1's apologies, substitutions and declarations of interest. I don't think we've got any apologies or substitutions, so I'm going to do a roll call and then we'll take declarations of interest. So Colin, you want to do the roll call?
Yes, convener. Can the following councillors please indicate that they're present at the meeting, either remotely or in person? Councillor Alfeld.
Remotely.
Councillor Clockerty.
Remotely.
Councillor Curley.
Remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
In person.
Councillor McCormick.
Remotely.
Councillor Jay McElhaney.
He's having problems. He was on his signed off, he was signed on our device, he says.
Present, remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
Present remotely.
Councillor Moran.
Present remotely.
Councillor Rebecki.
Present remotely.
Councillor Robertson.
Remotely.
Councillor Wilson.
In person.
Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor McElhaney.
Yeah, item 15, paragraph 5.9. I'm the chair or co-chair of the charity Home Start Renfrewshire and Inverclyde.
Councillor Curley's got a declaration. Councillor Curley.
Thank you, Convener. Item number 6, Financial Service Performance Update. Due to Inverclyde Leisure and my membership of the board of Kilmacombe New Community Council, or New Community Centre.
Okay, any other declarations?
Hi Stephen, just me for Inverclyde Leisure, item 6 as well.
Thanks, Chuck. Polly?
Yeah, Stephen, the item in the private agenda as I know that other properties in Inverclyde.
Is this where I remind elected members they are encouraged to notify officers in advance of the meeting of their declarations of interest rather than leaving it to the meeting? That's you tell. Okay, thanks for that, colleagues. So moving on to item 2, COVID-19 update, and Martin's going to speak to that report.
Thank you, Convener. Start off with a kind of background. As you'll probably see, since the last committee, we had a significant decline in case numbers, dropping from, I think, a high of around about 1250 cases per 100,000 down to an average of 200 to 300 cases for most of October. It then increased at the beginning of November up to a high of round about 420 per 100,000 in Inverclyde. That has since gone down over the last 2 or 3 days. It's probably too soon to say that's a definite trend, but it's gone down to about 367 as of today. And the Scottish average is now 385. So we're slightly below average, and we're currently around about 19th of the 32 local authorities. We did get, when we first had the big increase, because we had the largest increase in Greater Glasgow and Clyde initially, we got a wee bit of a breakdown to see if there was any pattern or anything we should know about there. And it seems to be that the increases were greatest in primary school age children, then slightly lower in secondary school age children. And then there were increases also, but far smaller in the kind of working age group that would probably cover parents of both those groups. So slightly higher in the sort of 30 to 40-year-olds, and not quite such a big increase in the kind of 44 to 65-year-olds. What is very promising is that the case rate in over 65s has actually declined. It's significantly lower than the average. So as of Last week in Inverclyde, the case rate in the over 65s was around about 130 per 100,000, and that's since declined. I don't have an exact figure, but it's declined across the board in GGC. And apparently, having just seen the First Minister's statement, it's also declined in the whole of Scotland in that age group. So that hopefully indicates that there's possibly a link with the COVID booster injections. And there's also a decrease in hospital admissions, both in Greater Glasgow and Clyde and in Scotland as a whole. Now, again, I don't have figures, so it's not broken down to local authority, but that definitely does seem to be a positive trend. So that's the sort of general background. In terms of workforce, you've got your usual workforce update in section 5, giving the kind of breakdowns of current absence rates as against historic over the course of the pandemic. Section 6 of the report is about occupational health provision. You'll recall that as part of the organisational recovery plan, additional occupational health provision was put in place for this year. There's a request here because of the ongoing effects of the pandemic and the reduction of access to NHS services to actually extend that provision for the next 2 years at a cost of roughly 40k. The total cost is 60k, but a third of it is being borne by the HSCP. So recommendation 3.2 covers that use of the COVID. So it should be the COVID fund as opposed to the COVID contingency AMR. That's my error. I changed it in the finance boxes, but I didn't change it in the recommendation. So if we could change that, it's the COVID fund to fund the ongoing additional occupational health provision. Section 7 covers the vaccination strategy and where we are with the vaccination strategy. Members will be aware that we did have some issues a couple of weeks ago with queuing, but those appear to be entirely resolved. There's been no issues in the last couple of weeks, and hopefully that will continue. Figures for booster vaccinations are good. I have updated figures, but they've all the booster numbers have increased. We are now well into the 65 to 69-year-olds, where we have 80% coverage, and we're on 42% of the 60-64 cohort. So it's all progressing very well, as we'd expect. And you'll be aware that we've also had the national portal open for booking for over 50s. We don't have any indications to when that will be the case for 40 to 50-year-olds in line with yesterday's announcement, but realistically that's going to be in the new year because of the lag between second and third doses. So that's where we are with vaccination. Section 8 just covers briefly the organisational recovery plan and the updated action plans attached at Appendix 1 for members' attention. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Martin. So obviously, usual protocols, if members want to speak, we'll remotely indicate in the chat, and if you're in the chamber, indicate by catching my eye or switching a light on. Okay, any member want to come in? No, don't see any. Maybe I could just ask in terms of the organisational recovery plan, maybe just ask the Chief Executive. I think there was a meeting the other day of the members oversight group, but as the Chief Executive, are you satisfied with the progress overall in terms of the recovery plan?
Yourself, convener. Yes, I think we've made good progress in a number of areas. I watch with interest what's happening in England, but in relation to and how that might transpire and translate in relation to Scotland. And I'm pleased where we're going in relation to the increased support in relation to staff and their well-being, which I think is really important as we try and go through the recovery.
Okay, thanks for that. I was expecting Councillor Wilson to be making a passionate plea for us to be arguing with the Scottish Government about parents to get into school nativities, etc. But
I think I said my piece there, convener.
You've said your piece on that one. Okay. Right, so we agree the recommendations in the report, colleagues? Yeah, okay. Thanks for that. Moving on to item 3, which is the 2021-22 revenue budget update. Alan's going to speak to that report.
Thank you, Convener. The committee's own budget is projecting a £333,000 overspend due to income shortfalls, as outlined in the report. The Common Good Fund is projecting a £43,000 underspend, largely due to the cancellation of events in 2021. General Fund overall is projecting a £327,000 overspend. This assumes the estimated pay inflation pressures will be contained in the existing inflation contingencies. Projected fee reserves at the 31st of March 22 are 4.563 million, and I can confirm that this is in line with the information contained in the audited accounts going to the Special Council meeting on Thursday, and Appendix 10 provides the latest position in respect of COVID-related funding, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions, colleagues? No, don't see any, so agree to the recommendations. Okay, that takes us on to item 4, the Resources Capital Budget and 2021-24 Capital Programme. Again, Alan.
Thank you. The report covers the current position of the 2021-24 capital programme and shows that overall the programme is within approved limits. While spend is only 25% of the spend, the projected spend for the year, officers are confident that overall projected spend in 2021-22 should be achieved. No other matters to highlight. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No. No. Okay, agree to recommendations?
Agree.
Item 5, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report 2021-22. Alan.
Thank you. This is the mid-year Treasury report, which requires to be remitted to the full council in line with the Prudential Code. There's a small reduction in external debt of £800,000 in the first 6 months of the year, but I can advise that £10 million was repaid yesterday and will be reflected in future reports. Paragraph 5.1 summarises the main movements in the first 6 months of the year. Interest rates continue to be at historically low levels, but it was clear that there are indications now that rates will start to increase in the next month or so. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Alan. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No. No. Okay, agree to recommendations? Agree. Item 6, Finance Service Performance Update. Alan.
Thank you, Convener. This report covers a number of specific areas. Section 5 provides an update on the impact of welfare reforms, including updates on universal credit, self-isolation support grant, a recent Audit Scotland report into housing benefit, and finally seeks approval for how the Tenants' Hardship Grant Fund would be delivered within Inverclyde. Section 6 summarises the position of the Insurance Fund at 30th of September 2021. The report highlights the proposed use of the Insurance Fund to meet the Council's contribution to the Financial Redress Scheme. Section 7 provides the annual update in respect of the governance of external organisations and seeks approval for the list of organisations to be included over the next 12-month period. Finally, approval is sought to use £90,000 from the former Housing Repairs and Renewals Fund to carry out a housing stock condition survey. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Alan. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No. Well, we were on a good roll there, and Councillor Robertson has just rolling us completely off track by wishing to exercise her democratic right to scrutinise. So, Elizabeth, you want to come in?
Thanks very much, Convener. That sounds very grand when you put it that way. It's just simply a question, honestly, everybody. It's really about the universal credit, the reduction of the £20 per week for families. First of all, I guess really just when do we think that we're likely to see the sort of impact of that coming through in terms of the other measures and mitigations that we've got in place? And secondly, what are we doing as a financial inclusion partnership, our partnership for financial inclusion in the area to sort of look at ensuring that we are cushioning that type of decision for the people who are most financially vulnerable in the area?
Okay, Alan, you want to kick off?
Thank you. In terms of measuring the impact and seeing the impact, it is quite early yet. There has certainly been a slight increase in crisis grants that the council has been giving out through the Scottish Welfare Fund. And as time goes on, we'll see whether there is an upward trend or whether things settle down. One thing that I can advise all members is that, as is covered later in the agenda, the Scottish Government has given advance warning of a financial hardship fund, £25 million coming out to local authorities, but details of what Inverclyde Council will receive in that will not be known until the beginning of December. But already through Ruth's anti-poverty group, officers have been working on proposals, and one of the proposals is to put more funding into the crisis grant side of things in anticipation for the increase in demand for crisis grants. And there'll be other proposals in that will maybe partly answer the second part of your question, Councillor Robertson, regarding what we're doing collectively. In terms of what the Financial Inclusion Partnership is doing, I don't know if I could pass that on to Alan Stevenson, whose service lead the key liaison with the Financial Inclusion Partnership.
Okay, Alan.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Alan. Yeah, as Councillor Robertson would expect through yourself, Convener, there's a range of pieces of work we're involved in to offer advice, guidance and support to people of Inverclyde who are struggling. We're looking at all the things we have been doing around heat. All of these things are designed to really try and mitigate what might be. But I have to say, at the moment in our service, we don't have a significant amount of evidence of any direct implications. Alan's mentioned the hardship grants, etc. But checking out with the team, I don't have anything to report to members at this point that I can directly link to that at the moment. But I think it is still early days. Councillor Robertson, I'd expect in the coming months we might be able to comment on that further.
Okay, Elizabeth, if you want to come back in.
Thanks, that's really helpful, Convener. I'm wondering if it's something that we can have a particular look at just as time progresses, just so that we are able to take any actions that are in our gift to take to make things easier for people at the earliest possible opportunity, just by knowing the situation.
Yeah, I think that's a fair request. I'm sure that the Financial Inclusion Partnership will obviously be keeping a watching brief, but we can obviously have an update to the next committee meeting on that. And I think we can send out a message, obviously, to anybody struggling out there. Please contact us and see what support and advice that we can give. Okay, Tommy, you want to come in?
Yes, thanks, Convener. Question for Alan. Alan, looking at the balance in the insurance fund of 3.673 million, and bearing in mind the pressure on the capital programme, etc., what would you consider to be an optimum balance in that fund going forward?
Councillor Cofferty usually asks that question, Tommy, so that's really out of order of you to ask that question.
Thank you. Yes, that threw me because I was expecting it from another source. But the balance we've got, I think, as you know, we get a triennial actuarial review where somebody comes and assesses the balance, and generally our fund balance is kept at around about the £3 million level, which is the assessed amount from the actuary, on the basis that a lot of the claims that we deal with and the more expensive claims are longer tailed, so they can be related to people's health, particularly those who've worked before some of the health and safety measures that the council now has in place were in place, so in predecessor councils, etc. The main impact in the short term on this, which will probably bring the balance down below the last recommended actuarial level, will be the financial redress scheme linked to the National Child Abuse Inquiry. And the proposal is that councils pay £100 million into this over the next 10 years. And as part of my planning for the financial strategy, which will come to the December council meeting, I will be factoring in the council's estimated contribution to that, which will come as no surprise because we generally were 1.5% of the national pot. It'll be about 1.5 million, so that will reduce the balance, I have to say, quite a bit below what the actuary would say that we would have. So in short, I don't think there's any scope for us to move any other balances into capital or reserves.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, Alan. Thank you.
It was worth a try anyway, Tommy. Okay, any other questions from Colleagues? No? Okay, we agree recommendations?
Agree.
Okay, that takes us on to item 7, procurement update, and Eddie's going to speak to that report.
Yeah, thanks, convener. The report covers a general procurement update and there's 3 main items. The first item addresses the annual procurement report for 2020-2021, which is included as Appendix 1 to the report. There's further clarification in Section 5 around spend and the proportion of that with local and SME suppliers. The second item provides an update on the expansion of Fair Work First and the letter from Scottish Ministers, which is included as Appendix 2 to the report, and that has now been followed up with an updated procurement policy note, as outlined in the background. Section 6 also summarises the 3 key areas of activity and some of the actions required, with further work to be undertaken and an action plan developed and brought back to the February committee. And the last item seeks approval to add Scape Scotland to the current list of framework and collaborative agreements and the Council's standing orders related to contracts. And as outlined within the report, Scape have been established for some time, but have recently refreshed their framework offering to include a new consultancy services element, and access to that framework will offer a route for property services and other services to supplement existing in-house technical resources where required for the delivery of the various capital programme projects. I've asked that the committee approve the recommendations, and both David and I are here and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Eddie. Chris, Phil, you want to come in?
Thank you, convener. Thanks, Stephen. Basically, my question is on item 5.5, and it's maybe not so much of a question of what's in the paper, but I just want to try and see if this officers are able to provide a little bit more information on this. I noticed that the local spend is still sticking around 25%, and I'm just wondering how that compares with other local authorities. So if you're spending 25% in our local authority, obviously I'm conscious of the fact that a pound spent in Inverclyde is worth more than a pound spent in Croydon for ourselves. So I'm just wondering how much of our spend could possibly be what they call spent locally. Is there any systemic issues with respect to what they call what services we actually need from the local economy are not able to provide? Is there any ways we can look to see about developing that provision within the local economy, and whether or not there's a possibility of looking at how that number compares with our neighbouring local authorities to see whether or not we have got less than them with regard to our spend in the local authority.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Eddie?
So you can be in, I'm hoping David has some more detail and they can maybe offer some responses to that. It's not something I hold. David, is there anything you can assist on some of that?
Yeah, hopefully be able to give a wee bit of background context. I think in comparison to other local authorities to a similar sort of demograph to us, we're doing favourably well in comparison to them, but you compare us against potentially like your Glasgow's and your Edinburgh's, you know, they're obviously got much greater pulling power based on the sort of supply base in and around their local authority area. So I think as a whole we're doing quite well in comparison to others of a similar sort of demograph to us. In relation to what we can do to improve that, as part of the procurement strategy refresh, which is going to be done this financial year, we will be having a sharp focus on local procurement. We've already got that contained within a lot of the policies and procedures that we're following at the moment, but I think we're going to revisit that, engage with the supply base, and also the spend analysis exercise that we're doing is allowing us to identify where we're spending, who we're spending with, and potentially where the gaps are and how we can try and plug them. So a lot of that will be captured as part of the ongoing procurement strategy refresh that's scheduled to come. Hopefully that clarifies, but I'm happy to take any further clarifications if need be.
Okay, Chris, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I think it'd be great if you can get some sort of numbers on the what would be. My wife always talks about her comparator school, for instance, when she's in education. So obviously says how you do your school compared with her comparator school. I'm just wondering, do we have such a thing as a comparator local authority? We talk about local authority similar demographics. I'm just wondering, I want to just see how are we doing with respect to what they call authorities of our size or similar sizes. I'm thinking more of the Renfrewshires, East Renfrewshires rather than Glasgow. I understand Glasgow's always going to be a bit of a draw. But I'm just conscious of the fact that is there anything we can do from a regeneration point of view and an enterprise and a point of view to try and encourage more businesses and things in the area to be able to provide the services for us, as opposed to looking for what they call it. Basically, I've seen if there's any ways we can get businesses into the local authority to provide this area and have a base within the area. It should be interesting to see how we compare against those demographics. If you say the similar, it'd be good to maybe get a small short paper, not looking at a short report in the future systems, so we can see exactly how we do compare with similar size local authorities and with a similar demographic, as you say, with and see exactly how we comparing, if we're actually at the similar sort of level, or we're underperforming, or what can we actually do to actually provide more services locally within Inverclyde.
David, that's something you could provide?
Yeah, I think some of it I'd probably need to go away and do a bit of information gathering. We do, as a procurement function, do a procurement and commercial capability improvement plan, which is all councils are assessed on the same criteria, and one of them is local spend. So, that's why I'd based it on what had been done historically, because we haven't done that throughout the COVID period, just due to other priorities. But that will be recommencing as we go into the next year, and that's something that allows us to compare like for like with other similar types of local authorities. So that should give us a good idea of what that is, but more than happy to take an action away that I can do a bit of a comparison and get some sort of briefing note, or however it's best communicated across to you guys, so that you've got that context.
Okay, that would be useful. David, is there any way of us getting information on Inverclyde companies, I suppose, securing spend in other local authorities? I mean, I suppose that's one of the arguments we've looked at before, is if we, in a sense, tried to skew everything towards Inverclyde companies and every other council did the same, then the opportunities for Inverclyde company to actually, I suppose, sell services or provide goods to larger authorities would obviously be constrained.
Yeah, so that's something that we're currently working on at the moment. We've been doing a very comprehensive and robust spend analysis exercise, and we're using a tool that the Scottish Government provide, Spites Cavell, I think they've recently renamed it. But what that allows us to do is identify companies that have got the local postcodes, but not only spend with our unitary authority, but with all other 32 authorities, so that we can actually try and get that. So that's something that we'll be incorporating into our procurement strategy, and particularly the local element, and what we can do to support our local suppliers and communities as we move forward, so that we can try and identify where the opportunities are and align them to the pipeline of work that's sort of appended as part of the report. Over the next 2 years, there's 30 odd projects that we will be moving forward with, and it's potentially trying to target the local suppliers that are capable of delivering those and making sure that they're primed and ready to do so. So that's definitely something that's ongoing and developing.
Okay, maybe if you bring that information and the information that Councillor Cully's looking for to a future committee in terms of the report you're talking about. Okay, I see Councillor Alfield wants to come in. Ronnie?
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, thanks. It's Appendix 1, the full list of regulated procurements. Just a quick one on item 3 there, Enable Scotland. Is this contract still operational? My understanding was that the employer engagement part of it was no longer operational. Can we just confirm that is or is not the case? Thanks.
Okay. David, is that you?
That's one I don't have the answer to off the top of my head, but it's one that I'm more than happy to go and get the clarification and circulate what the answer to that is.
Okay, thanks, David. I think from memory, that was lot 3. I think Stuart would recall it, that is the case. I think that was lot 3 in the bidding process, and there was some dispute about it at the time. So it would be interesting to know if, in fact, it's still operational. Thanks.
Okay, well, I think Stuart's put in the chat. Stuart, do you want to come in?
Through you, convener, the Enable Scotland contract is still live.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Shanna, do you want to come in?
Well, it's just a comment. How to encourage other people to actually get onto the list, because some of them are frightened, one, it takes a long while for us to pay them, and that's not true. And if you get Alan's record is very high, it's in the 90s. Another one is trying to get a system for smaller suppliers that's easy to do and they can get onto their computer. I think they're all frightened it's a massive big thing and invoices, not a lot of extra paperwork. And if there could be a system and explain to them, we might be looking at some other folk doing it. Locally, I'm talking about. Just wonder, what happens. Is there a way of getting that across to them? Because I think that's part of their fear. And more so right now with the money the way it is, everybody's frightened to lay out money for over a month because they're in overdraft or whatever. And that's them. Okay.
David, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, through you, convener. I think there's a lot of work that we're going to do with our partnership with Supplier Development Programme. I think a lot of stuff has been put on hold because of the COVID situation. Not on hold, but not moving at the pace that that we'd need to in relation to some elements of it. And I think that's something that we'll definitely be revisiting. A lot of supplier engagement will be happening between now and the formation of the procurement strategy, in particular the local SME community, to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose and relevant to them. And again, I welcome any sort of feedback in relation to ideas and suggestions as to what the suppliers need and want from us. So I think we do offer quite a comprehensive service in relation to what's available through the systems, which is Public Contract Scotland and Public Contract Scotland Tender, and how to use them. And equally, we'll start to move things forward with the Supplier Development Programme and the sort of Chamber of Commerce and different people like that, to make sure that we're hearing what suppliers are saying and we're adapting to that.
Okay, thanks for that, David. I've got David Wilson, Councillor Wilson in the chamber.
Just a clarification. What is David Aiken's position in the company?
David is corporate procurement manager, so he came in Brendan Huddle's replacement.
Right.
David came from Western Berkshire Council and has extensive experience on the construction side.
I hadn't met him before, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, Chris, Phil, you want to come back in?
No, it was just to say I was going to agree with you about the earlier statement about making there's two sides to the same argument. So yeah, not often I do it, but yeah.
I don't know, Chris. I think me and you regularly agree on things. I was just going to ask Eddie a question around. Let me get the name of that partnership, Scape Scotland. In terms of it talks about being a public sector partnership. What does that actually mean in practice?
Effectively,
David's probably has more knowledge of this because he's been involved in his previous role as well. So, David.
Yeah, effectively, it's a cluster of authorities have got together to come up with compliant procurement delivery vehicles that they felt there was a gap in the market for, particularly around local authorities being able to adopt them based on the needs of what the councils are trying to deliver in relation to capital plans. So it's public authorities or RSLs who are used to working within the public sector procurement rules have got together and developed a set of framework, a suite of frameworks, that are mentioned in there, and particularly around construction and civils and consultancy type frameworks that allow us to do it. So I think that's the additional level of security that you get from using Scape, is that it's done by public sector people for public sector people.
Is that a sort of UK-wide sort of partnership?
They have Scape Scotland in particular, so that it initially started down in England. LHC was the old name of them, and they formed down there. And because of the gap in the market and how much usage it was getting from public sector bodies down there, they done the research and the data gathering and came up to Scape Scotland, and they made it specific to Scotland because our needs are different, as much as we are within the UK. There was definitely a lot of sort of different challenges and different frameworks that are needed. So that there was a form of Scape Scotland, which is the one that we would be wanting to adopt.
And are they a not-for-profit organisation?
Yes, so effectively, the way that their model is funded is, the councils, there is small fees for using a framework, but it's then reused in relation to developing and exploring other framework opportunities for doing that. So it's effectively a non-for-profit, but the way that they do it is they turn that into expanding their framework portfolio based on the evidence that there's a requirement from the councils that's needed.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? Don't see any. Okay, Pat, degree recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, item 8, contract awards 1st of April 2021 to 30th September 2021, and Anne's going to speak to that report.
Thank you. This is the biannual report advising the committee of the contracts awarded for the supply of goods or materials, provision of services and execution of works during the period 1st April to 30th September 2021. Members will see that Appendix 1 provides details of the contracts awarded for this period where the estimated price of the contract exceeds £25,000 for the supply of goods or materials and provision of services, and where the estimated price of the contract exceeds £100,000 for the execution of works. And more detail regarding Appendix 1 is provided in paragraph 4.2 of the report. Paragraph 2.3 refers to Appendix 2, which provides details of direct awards, direct call-offs from frameworks, ICT negotiated contracts and contract modifications made during the relevant period, where the value of the contract exceeds £25,000 for the supply of goods or materials and a provision of services. And I'm asking the committee simply to note the contracts awarded during the relevant period.
Okay, thanks, Anne. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No, don't see any. Great to note.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us on to item 9, delivering differently programme update, and Alan's going to speak to that. Alan?
Thank you, Convener. This is the annual Delivering Differently report and shows good progress over the last 12 months with 9 projects completed. Paragraph 5.3 seeks approval to amend and combine some projects in light of developments over the COVID period. In line with previous years, approval for the Chief Executive to carry out VER trawls to inform the development of proposals is sought, but on the understanding as previously that no decisions are taken to release employees without report to the relevant committee, and approval for environment to close up the internal audit shared service project is requested. I'm happy to provide any further information or clarification.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No, okay, agree with recommendations. That takes us on to item 10, corporate policy, performance and organisational development update report. Andrea's going to speak to that. Andrea?
Thank you, Convener. This is a combined report from corporate policy and organisational development. It covers 4 key areas. The first is the Council's corporate annual performance report, which for the first time provides a combined report covering the progress made against the 10 organisational priorities and the statutory performance indicators. The report provides a range of information and achievements throughout 2021 across the range of services. It also includes a performance dashboard and also some information from the 2021 citizens panels that were carried out, of which there was 2 within the year. Section 5 covers the recently published new guidance on the Favour Scotland duty. Members will be aware in 2018 the Scottish Government published interim guidance on Favour Scotland duty, and this is the final guidance. There's no material changes from the interim guidance apart from mention of COVID within the new guidance, and the Council is currently complying with what's set out in the duty. Section 6 provides the recent information from the National Record of Scotland on the recent decreases in life expectancy in Inverclyde, with both decreases seen across males and females. It's useful to point out that decreases have also been seen at a Scottish and UK level too. So we're not an outlier in that respect. And Section 7 of the report covers the Council's Workforce Information and Activity Report, which has got key highlights, a link to the full report on the website, and also mention of the elected members briefing that has taken place on this subject. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Any questions or comments, colleagues? No? Oh, are you waving, Chris? You've not got access to that chat? Oh, it's just come through all the way from Port Glasgow. It's obviously a slow day today. Right, Chris?
I should just have typed in Q as opposed to question, but there we go. Just on item 4.4 about the McLean Museum increased, the McLean Museum increase from 42,277 to 48,160 in 2021. So we've actually seen an increase during the pandemic, is that correct?
Through you, convener. Yes, we've seen that. Ruth may want to come in on this. We've seen an increase. It probably need to remind members that the McLean Museum was actually closed for a period of time, obviously in terms of refurbishment. But yep, there has been an increase in the latter months. Ruth, I don't know. Do you want to add anything?
Ruth?
No, nothing to add. And also, I think there was a change in the way that museum and library visits were counted as well.
Okay, happy with that, Chris?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a health warning on the statistics, but maybe we can see how it progresses going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? No? Okay, agree recommendations.
You agree?
Takes us on to item 11, Freedom of Information Annual Report 2020. Anna, you're going to keep up on that?
Carol's going to
Carol?
to this.
Great, thank you, convener. So this is the annual report for the Freedom of Information performance covering the period of 1st of January to 31st of December 2020 inclusive. Section 5 of the report outlines the volumes that we've received during the period, which reflects on a reduction in requests received. We received 1,009 FOI requests, 33 environmental information requests and 66 subject access requests. Section 5.2 provides a breakdown of the volumes over the last 5 years. And in comparison to the previous years, a couple of noting points is that we've seen an increase in the environmental information requests, which is down to accurate categorisation of those requests. And we've also seen an increase in subject access requests because people have become more aware of their rights to make those requests. In section 5.4, we cover off the sort of response timescales, and it is noted that during the first few months of the year, that when the pandemic actually struck, that we did start to see some pressures on our timescale management. 15 requests were reported as not responded to, but in the earlier quarters, the numbers were higher, but have subsequently then been reported as late responded requests. During the year, we have also seen the legislation that was introduced on the Coronavirus Act, which has since expired, so that's noted within the report. Section 5.6 also covers the reviews that we've received during the year. So there was 9 FOI request reviews received, 3 environmental request reviews received. 2 were subsequently referred to the Scottish Information Commissioner for a decision. One of those decisions was actually upheld and the other one was later withdrawn. Section 6 of the report provides an update on the Corporate Development Improvement Plan that was implemented the previous year, and I'm pleased to report that the WorkPro system has been cascaded to services during the month of December, along with training to assist them in your use of that system. Training is also scheduled for freedom of information legislation for service officers throughout the month of December, and the revised guidance is currently going to refresh and will be issued in the month of December as well. Section 7 of the report provides an update on the costs associated in time with responding to FOI requests, and I'm pleased to note that there was a reduction. It will be in light of the lower numbers that we did receive, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and ask the committee to note the report.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Any questions from colleagues? Councillor Rose.
Yeah. Do you have any sense of the percentage of FOIs that come from national political parties?
We did some monitoring of that earlier in the year, Councillor Wilson, and we do see peaks and troughs of the sort of activity that comes through there. I would say the last 3 quarters it's been at a very reasonable level, but at times it can see peaks where there's voluminous nature's requests, and that's something that we monitor.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, Stephen. Just there's a couple of questions in 2 parts, I suppose. First of all, obviously, My understanding of the Freedom of Information Act is it's information that would normally expect to be readily available to the public. So I'm just wondering whether or not we notice it says the procedure is going to be reviewed, whether or not how that review takes place and how do we generally feed in whether or not we should be providing more information just generally based on the type of freedom of information requests we get. So rather than what they call waiting for freedom of information requests, do we have a way of working into a system that we maybe provide this information just generally on the website or what have you in the first place? And looking at the estimated costs of the FOIs, I'm just wondering at what point do we decide that the freedom of information request, the cost that would be spent to it would be unreasonable, and therefore how many of the freedom of information requests have been rejected on the basis of cost?
Okay, Carol.
Yep, certainly. So the provision of information and making information accessible is an area that is an ongoing piece of work. And it's something that, you know, we encourage everyone to do, but it has to be carefully balanced on the offset of taking the time to prepare everything and put it online versus actually having it available. But that is something we do encourage each of the service areas to do. There has been some progress in some areas, and what we do see is a pattern that the requesters can still make the request. So although in one respect you will see maybe the requests going out the door quicker, so to speak, in terms of how we respond to them, because we would use one of the exemptions to say that the information is already accessible. But it is something that is encouraged that we should publish as much as we can where it's reasonably practical, and that would continue to be the case. The other point I would make on that, with the implementation of the workflow system, that will give us a better oversight and visibility of some of the requests that we're receiving and the ability to analyse them and perhaps present the information differently in how we respond to those requests. So that will give us some insight to use, but we're in very early days in terms of its implementation to sort of maximise that. Second question, part of your question about the unreasonable costs and rejecting them. We've only had a small number of requests that have met that threshold. My understanding there has been about 2 or 3 of those requests made, not accurate on the exact number, but 2 or 3 have been rejected over the year. And when it's an environmental information request, we would go down the route of considering charging for the information as well, if it's deemed to be quite a considerable amount of information, but within the tolerances that you have to make that assessment, which we would follow within legislation guidelines.
Thank you, that's very useful. It's just a good idea to get the idea of the quantum so generally we've got quite a lot of freedom of information requests being made, and its overall cost is about £30,000. So it seems we're talking about a reasonable, what do you call it, something that's manageable, but just be interested to see if that was very interesting to find it's only 2 or 3 that we feel would cost too much for us to actually to reply on that basis. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions, comments? No? Okay, agree with the recommendation? Agreed. Right, that takes us on to item 12, Inverclyde Council Annual Complaint Handling Report, 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. Again, Carol, is that you?
That's myself, Convener, thank you. So the annual report is summarising the performance of our complaint handling over the period 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. The report provides you in Appendix 1 a breakdown of performance information, analysis of complaint activity, and an update on the learning taken from complaints. Section 5 of the report provides a good level of detail on the performance and the volumes of complaints we've been receiving. In the year, we received and handled 269 complaints and we closed 250 of those complaints. Should be noted that that shows a reduction in complaints received in that period, largely attributable to the onset of the global pandemic and different focuses for individuals at that particular time. Looking at the stage 1 complaints and focusing in on timescales, 86% of complaints were closed within 5 days, which is an improvement comparing against the same period last year. And the average number of days to close complaints came in at 5 days for stage 1, which remains within the key performance indicator. In terms of upheld complaints, 55 cases were upheld and 38 cases were partially upheld. Within the stage 2 complaints, 74.3% of the complaints were closed within 20 days, again within the tolerance. This shows a decrease in where we were positioned last year, but again, looking at the average number of days to close those complaints, that came in at 16.2 days, so again within the threshold. Upheld cases came in at 13 cases and partially upheld was 11 cases. And lastly, looking at the escalated complaints that migrate from stage 1 to stage 2, 80% of those complaints were closed within the 20-day threshold. And again, that shows another positive improvement on the period from last year. The average days taken to close those complaints was 15.1 days, which again increased slightly, but again within the tolerance of 20 days. And in terms of upheld numbers, they were quite low numbers that we've seen coming through there. So 3 cases upheld and 3 cases partially upheld. In section 5.6, service improvements for the council, Inverclyde Leisure and Riverside Inverclyde are reported each quarter to our directorate management teams, and the HSB requires to implement that part into their process in the coming year in 2022. In section 5.7, the implementation of customer satisfaction survey was delayed this year due to some resource challenges in order to provide the development and technical process. So that will be revisited in 2022. And the remaining updates is on the SPSO's complaint volumes that we've seen coming through in the year. So the council received 7 complaints at the early resolution stage at SPSO, and I'm pleased to note that none of those complaints were investigated by the SPSO. In terms of HSCP, there was 3 complaints received for the HSCP at the SPSO, one of which was dealt with at early resolution and 2 were reviewed by SPSO, one of which was upheld and the other one was not upheld. This reflects a reduction for the council and the HSCP in respect of complaints received at the SPSO. The sort of final points we're noting today is that the council received a letter from the SPSO with guidance in relation to how we handle our customer service complaints and the application of the model complaint handling procedure. The SPSO does acknowledge that there is pressure on public bodies, although emphasis has been placed on how we communicate with our service users, particularly where we are expecting to encounter some delays. And in respect of that, they have asked councils to consider their plans in terms of how they move forward into recovery to normal service. And the Information and Governance Complaint Officer will review the council's complaint handling and provide an update to our corporate management team in that respect. They recommended that the report is noted for the annual performance of the council's complaint handling and approves the publication of the annual report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the report today.
Okay, thanks for that, Carol. Any questions? Okay, Chris, you got a question?
Yes, thank you. My question is related to the sort of the flow of the complaints through the system. Also, you've got the stage 1 complaints, stage 2 complaints, and escalated stage 2 complaints. I'm presuming that the stage 2 complaints are a subset of the ones that were rejected at stage 1, and again, the escalated stage 2 complaints are a subset of the ones that were rejected at stage 2. I'm just wondering, is there any way of providing information so we can see the flow of the complaints through the system to see how they actually go? Because how many of the partially upheld complaints then go on to become a stage 2 complaint, that kind of thing. I just wonder if that information was available to see how
Carol, you want to correct Councillor Cullen, will I correct them?
That's absolutely fine. So just to sort of confirm what the process is. So complaints, there's 3 potential stages. Stage 1 generally is for simple, straightforward complaints, and about 80% of what we receive generally flow into that stage in the complaint handling procedure. If you go in at stage 2, some complaints will go into there straight away, so they don't necessarily have to go into stage 1 and then move into stage 2. So just for awareness, so that's generally intended for complaints that are more complex in nature and will take considerable time to maybe investigate. Any complaint, just from a reporting point of view, which moves into escalated stage 2, is a reflection on any person who has been unhappy with their investigation at stage 1. So the summary of complaints that I've given you at escalated stage 2 would be a reflection on any complaint handling where the individual has maybe suggested they were dissatisfied with the investigation that has been undertaken at stage 1 in the procedure. Hopefully that clears up maybe the concern that you've got, and again, I'm happy to answer any deeper questions you might want to ask in terms of the overall performance. The numbers are relatively small that we see escalating. However, if any issues arose in the initial investigation, that would be picked up by the director and their head of service in terms of reviewing the complaint and understanding any learnings we might need to take place or any coaching feedback that may be pertinent to the individual who undertook the investigation, which I understand to be very, very small in terms of the margins that I've seen coming through in the last 12 months.
Okay, Chris, you want to come back in?
Oh no, that's fine. That's thank you. So that explains it to me. So the escalated stage 2 relate to the subset of stage 1 effectively mostly. So that's fine. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I mean it's the same procedure as used across the sort of public sector and also the RSLs as well. Okay, Jim, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, convener. I have in the past had a lengthy correspondence with a dissatisfied complainant over the process regarding this person's feeling that it's not independent when it gets to a stage 2 and further, and the fact that it's the same department that's looking at the original complaint. I'm just wondering what the views are on that, Carol, is to say, is that normal practice for example, the head of the department or the corporate director to look at the investigation or to run with the investigation within their department, and is that deemed to be independent, or should it be someone out with that line management or that directorate?
Ricardo?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Jim. In terms of the process that we follow, we work on the basis that the service area will know the inner workings of the complaint that's been raised. They'll know all the ins and outs, and they will be independent in that review. If any head of service or even a director is then requested to overview the complaint, if there is any weaknesses in how we've applied our procedures, we would look at that and consider that, and they are reviewed to be impartial enough to sort of undertake that role. And should they feel it's necessary, and this is very, very rare that we do this, it's in the small number of complaints that we can ask somebody independent to look at the investigation and undertake it, but that is almost common practice across the large majority of public bodies that are reviewing their complaints procedure.
Yeah, Jimmy,
and again, the other point I would make there is that if someone was, oh, sorry, convener.
No, you go, Carol.
That's fine. The other point I would probably make as well is that there is always the independent review that this SPSO can undertake if somebody is dissatisfied with how we've undertaken an investigation. Anyone that has undergone through that process, it's quite a vigorous process that we go through of preparing the file, sending it to the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman, and then for them to assess whether they see weaknesses in how we've approached it. And again, that's another sort of element of independent review that can be undertaken. And from the numbers we've seen in the last 12 months, they have been probably of the fewer than we've seen in previous years, albeit against a backdrop of lower volumed complaints. I still see that quite positively.
I mean, I suppose just to follow that, Carol, obviously we don't want lots of complaints going to the SPSO, so therefore it is important that our internal processes are robust and there is that sort of independence in terms of any review of complaints. So, and I think the fact that there's relatively low numbers which go to the SPSO would suggest hopefully that we're getting that maybe about right.
Yeah, I would also sort of mention there as well, just to sort of encapsulate that I think that's working, is that for the majority of the cases that did go to the SPSO, we are seeing the majority of them at early resolution being reviewed and assessed as not being cases that that they need to take forward or getting involved in the investigation. And there's also been reflection on good complaint handling being evidenced in the reviews that have been undertaken. So I take some comfort in that review on those complaints that do see themselves through to that independent review, and agree wholeheartedly that we would rather keep lower numbers if we can and get it right in-house in terms of how we're reviewing our complaints.
Okay, thanks for that. You okay with that, Jim? Good. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so can we agree recommendations, colleagues?
Agreed.
Okay, that takes us on to item 13, the 2022-23 budget update. Alan's going to present that report.
Thank you, Convener. The report provides an update on the 2022-23 revenue budget and seeks specific decisions in respect of unavoidable budget pressures shown in Appendix 1, adjustments and savings shown in Appendix 2, and the approach to agreeing the Council's contribution to the IJB for 2022-23 is set out in Section 6. Finally, the report provides updates in terms of the next steps and the potential projected funding gap for 2023-24. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions, colleagues?
Graham does.
No, just in case members of the public or press watching thinking we're not giving proper scrutiny to this particular matter, we obviously operate through the members' budget working group, and members have discussed this report through that process and are content with the recommendations in the report. So can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. I think that takes us on to item 14, Programme for Government 2021-22. Stuart's going to present that report.
Convener, through you. On the 7th of September this year, the Scottish Government issued its strategy, A Fairer, Greener Scotland Programme for Government 2021-22. It focuses on 6 chapters: a caring society, Scotland as a land of opportunity, a net zero nation, an economy that works for all of Scotland's people and places, living better, and establish Scotland in the world. The full document can be found in the link in paragraph 4.5. Officers have compared the previous programme for government with the new one, and that's comparisons contained in Appendix 1. Recognising that this is a political document, suggestions have been made in respect of the ownership for initiatives which may be developed with an Inverclyde context. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from colleagues? David, hello.
Yeah, Stuart, have you developed an Inverclyde context yet?
Through you, Convener. No, Councillor Wilson, recognising that the document is a new document, we are looking at where the opportunities are for Inverclyde, and we will develop those on an ongoing basis, and recognising that we will also feed back to the committee in any progress that we make for each of the initiatives.
So it's in hand then, Mr. Jimmerson?
It's in progress, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth, you want to come in?
Thank you. I think it's really useful to have this, just in terms of creating that link between the things that are the Scottish Government's aspirations that are very much delivered and come to life at local government. And I think that having this document here strengthens that, the notion that the things that the Scottish Government wants to do, we do in partnership with them, as very much a delivery agent, but also a partner in what they're hoping to achieve. And a lot of the aspirations, obviously, we share in terms of reaching net zero as a nation. One of the questions, or the question I really had was, and it's been a bugbear of mine for a while, is there are often authorities that are almost like kind of pre-approved in the programme for government. They're already stated as, you know, this investment will happen, this is going to happen in such and such a place, and I get tremendously envious of those places. And I'm just wondering, as we move forward with this as a piece of work, if we're planning to try and be pre-approved in the programme for government next year or in future years.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. And then maybe the Chief Exec wants to comment as well. Stuart?
Through you, Convener. We've commenced a series of meetings both with Scottish Government and UK Government directors looking to enhance Inverclyde's position. It's something that we're working with. We obviously had a very positive relationship with the previous Director for Economic Development, but unfortunately we weren't able to be pre-approved for anything. So we hope to maximise opportunities for Inverclyde across all of the programmes, and I'm happy if the Chief Executive wants to add anything to that.
Okay, Louise?
There's nothing else to add really, other than that Stuart and I, separately and together, have had a range of meetings in the last 8 weeks, and we've got a range of meetings agreed with both the UK and the Scottish Government, and we will pick up any opportunities that we possibly can and also think about how we can connect some of the opportunities that are available. So that's some of the work that we're currently doing. But Stuart will bring that back when appropriate to the Environment and Regeneration Committee.
Okay, thanks, Louise. Elizabeth, you happy with that? Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, agree with the recommendation? Agreed. Right, that brings us up to item 15, pensions discretion policy statement. I've read this report several times. I've attended the briefing by this, and I'm still trying to understand it. Stephen, you want to speak to this report?
Yes, thank you, Convener. This is the report that seeks the approval of the committee for an updated pensions discretions policy. You'll see there's a link to this report which takes you to the policy itself. The policy was originally agreed by this committee back in 2015, and what we've done today is basically update it to reflect some changes in the regulations. As you say, Convener, we've had a detailed briefing in this. I hope you have got a wee bit more of an insight about it following the briefing, but to summarise, there's not been any significant changes to the policy in terms of the policy decisions around it. It's really just been updated to reflect the new regulations. There's no additional costs attached to the updated policy. You will see that any areas where there are potential costs in terms of transparency, approvals are through this committee and through the corporate management team, and are subject to value for money criteria that we've got as part of our policies going forward. So really that's a quick summary of it, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that. I see Councillor Walkerty's put in the chat. He's going to explain the report to me later, so it's not a very question. If there's no change, that's the fundamental no change, that's the key message. Okay, any questions or comments, colleagues? No. Okay, just get a wee note in the chat that Councillor Jim McElhinney's indicated his declaration of interest is in respect of item 6. Okay, so with that, we agree the recommendation. Agreed. That takes us on to item 16, progress and development for anti-poverty interventions 2021-23. I think Tony's going to lead off on that.
Thanks very much, Convener. So this report provides committee with the progress in implementing the initiatives in relation to anti-poverty funding, and provides further information on the holiday meal payments for our pupils, and also the bridging payments we're making until the Scottish Child Payment for under 16s comes in 2023. I suppose specifically we are recommending the continuation of meal and bridging payments under Inverclyde's enhanced criteria. So good progress continues to be made in respect of the initiatives, and in line with, I would say, with other projects of this scale, much of the work is getting payments, governance and appropriate staffing in place. The report also references the recent announcement by the government in respect of the winter fund payments, which enables local authorities to support wellbeing and financial security in their communities. And I think Alan referred to this earlier as well, but proposals for the allocation of the funding, which has yet to be confirmed, will be brought to a meeting of full council on the 2nd of December. So committee's asked to note the report and also approve the proposals for the holiday meal payments and the child bridging payments too. Happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thanks for that, Tony. Any questions or comments from colleagues? No, don't see any. All happy with the progress. Thanks for that, Tony. So we agree the recommendations. Okay, that takes us on to item 17, update on participatory budgeting and Inverclyde. Again, Tony, you're going to lead off on that.
Thanks, Convener. So this report provides committee with an update on our planned activity in relation to PB over the next 6 months, particularly in relation to using just aspects of the road asset management plan and potentially community funding for the outdoor event next year. Members will be aware that a briefing took place on the 8th of November on this, but I'm happy to answer any further questions committee might have on it. PB is still very much a work in progress, and I suppose we're trying to say that we will learn as we go on with this, but we're asking for the committee to approve the approach that we've got over the next 6 months. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks for that, Tony. Any questions, colleagues? Jim, Michael,
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm quite concerned. Yeah, I appreciate that PB is a work in progress, but I'm really concerned the fact that we're giving the public the opportunity to decide what roads. It's basically turning into a popularity contest. I thought that the roads should be refurbished or looked at depending on the actual state, and it's be a technical assessment done by our council officers, etc., and then they should be graded in a list of priorities, and that should be where the focus is. But it shouldn't be going down to leave it up to how popular or how many votes people can get to say, right, if you want this pavement done, get your votes in, and that type of thing. I just don't know where the rationale is coming for this particular aspect.
I don't quite think that's the intention, Jim, but Tony will keep us right on that. Tony?
Yeah, so through you, Convener, it's only a very, very small part of the total road asset management plan that's been considered. All the essential works that is already programmed through technical assessment by the roads team and approved by Environment and Regeneration Committee. What this is £150,000 worth of other roads and pavements that would not normally require to be urgently done through the road asset management plan. So what we intend to do is provide communities, I suppose, with a list of these roads and walkways, plus the cost that it will be associated with doing these repairs. But these roads have actually been prepared by our roads team as well, and they've given us the list. So I think it's a very small, I think it's a £2 million odd budget, and this is £150,000 worth of work for, and one road may even take up the whole of that 150,000, but it is a small percentage, and it gives us the opportunity to test the model as well. But I hear what you're saying, but we have taken advice from our roads team and the technical expertise around that.
Is it not the case also, Tony, that we would give those who are involved in this process some understanding of the sort of current state of the roads as well? And we'd hope they'd understand the process that the council goes through to prioritise, and I suppose be better educated, as well as have the opportunity to, I suppose, make the decision.
That's right, Convener. It's just that it's a case of we will have some of our roads team along with us at any events that we will have online or in person, and they will be able to answer questions by members of the public about how we prioritise and also the costs associated with that. So very much that people start to understand the difficult decisions that councils make around the prioritisation as well, and hopefully, although there are never going to be no losers in the process, that people start to perhaps understand how difficult it is for us for the council to make decisions on priorities.
Okay, hopefully, Jim, that gives you a wee bit of reassurance. Elizabeth, you want to come in? You're not convinced, Jim, I can see. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Convener. I'm maybe a wee bit more convinced than Jim. Maybe a bit more. I think this is a journey that we do need to go on, and for all the reasons that you just said, you know, that I think it is important. We do get it in the neck quite a lot of the time as councillors, you know, we get it in the neck for, oh, the council have done this or they've not done that or whatever. And I think when there's more transparency and openness about the processes that we go through, the way that we make decisions, then I think that will help the relationship that we have with the public, which we want to be as positive and productive as it can be as we do make the difficult decisions that we make. The question that I've got is about 2.5 and the bullet points that are listed there. And I'm probably just looking for reassurance, Tony, Convener, actually that particularly in relation to one about the bespoke branding for PB, that this isn't going to become an expensive exercise, an industry in itself of feeding the beast of PB rather than just getting on and doing PB in a naturalistic way.
But I suppose I can offer assurance that there's not a lot of money attached to the branding and this. And what we're trying to do is when we talk about the branding, it's really essentially that no matter what we do with the public, it is part of that have your say, I suppose, that it's just one of the messages that we are given. And so we need to make sure that people understand when they're undertaking this, that it is PB that they're doing, but also that it forms part of the wider approach by the council to consult with our communities as well. So I can assure you it won't be an industry, because we won't be able to make it an industry anyway, but it's there really just to flag up that, I suppose, that the communities are aware that the council is actually, it's the council that's undertaking this, and it's the council that's facilitating all this, so that people start to develop, I suppose, an appreciation that we are listening to them. So that would be the whole concept of the branding, but certainly not proposing a lot of materials and anything that usually goes along with branding exercises like that. It's really just to flag up that it's us that's doing it.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes, please.
Stuart?
Yeah, I have a question for it. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor McElhenney here, but obviously this is a national thing. Could you tell me, Tony, at what stage can we pull out of this if we really feel conclusively that it's not being worthwhile and unproductive?
Sorry?
Okay, so it's part of a framework agreement that COSLA has with the Scottish Government and councils in order to undertake, and this was signed a number of years ago in terms of community empowerment. So it's part of the Community Empowerment Act, but essentially it's part of a overall framework agreement that councils have signed up to. So it would need to take something else for councils to then not be signed up to this for us to stop. So it's really just, I suppose this is the start of the process, I would see, unless we get to a time where the government and COSLA decide that PB is no longer something they want to pursue.
Thank you, Tony. Essentially, we're stuck with it. But thanks for the answer.
Such enthusiasm. Okay, any other questions or comments? No. Okay, we're happy to agree recommendations, or in some cases reluctantly agree the recommendation.
Reluctantly agree.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, that takes us on to item 18, Hamad, for the Queen Platinum Jubilee 2022 and City Status. And George was going to speak to that report.
Thank you, Convener.
Was a bit distracted there, George, by Councillor Curley stretching on his chair. Could you please avoid stretching like that again, Councillor Curley? Sorry, George.
This report follows up a report to last Policy and Resources Committee about the opportunity for towns across the UK to bid for city status. It highlights some research into the successful city status bid by Perth in 2012, and also provides some feedback from a short community consultation in the appendix. In general, that can be summarised that many residents believe the bidding process is costly and time consuming. There are a number of hindrances to a Greenock bid, such as its population level, and it doesn't have a cathedral. The report addresses some of those concerns. It also highlights some of the areas of Scotland believed to be considering applying as part of this competition. Members are asked to review the community views and information from the successful Perth city status bid and agree whether a bid could be submitted before the deadline for submissions for Greenock. To that end, Appendix 4 includes some content that could, if agreed, form the basis of a bid alongside statistical data and visuals to present a picture of Greenock and could be submitted in the required format before the deadline in December.
Okay, thanks, George. Okay, Tim McElhenney first.
Thanks, Convener. When I first seen the press release regarding this article, I thought it was an April Fool to start with. I thought, why are we spending money, etc., on this? And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? Why shouldn't we go for it? And I'd like to congratulate the officers for putting together the report that's attached, because it gives some great information. It showcases Inverclyde. Indeed, Stephen Stephen in his comments on the matter when it was announced, certainly put Inverclyde, or sorry, Greenock on the map. Thanks to Councillor Wilson, put Greenock on the map. And then I look at the towns that are we would be competing against. I thought, well, we're better than them. That's the bottom line. Why shouldn't we go for it if they're going for it? And whatever the attraction of becoming a city, whatever that brings. So yeah, I'm all for it. Now I've been convinced. My opinion has changed. So I would recommend that we do go for it.
Thanks for that, Jim. As I say, there's more joy in heaven. Okay. What the sinner that changes it. I'll let you finish it, Councillor Ross. Okay. Robert.
Hi, thank you, Convener. Convener, a few years back, I went to a thing in Glasgow. It was on for 3 days. It was called Great Cities, Great Places. And we had delegates from Northern America and throughout Europe. And we're in Glasgow for the 3 days. They were lived in Glasgow. Obviously, I come home at night. And that presented to us the opportunity to show Glasgow and what it was, what present ourselves to the whole of the world, not just Europe. And it went down fantastic well. And one of the speakers there was a guy from the Haven Project in Devon, who said when he said that he wanted to start the Haven Project, everybody thought he was mad. But he was determined that he was going to pursue it. And you look at the fantastic success that's turned out. We have a great, great story here to tell in Greenock. And why shouldn't we be punching to become a city? When you come into Inverclyde, you'll see it. The capital, it's the export capital of Scotland. You know, we have some history. We should be proud of our history, and I think we have nothing to lose and everything to gain by carrying on with our opportunity to apply for city status. And I, like Councillor McElhinney, certainly support this bid.
Okay, thanks for that, Robert. Channel, you want to come in?
Thanks, Convener. Just when we were talking about the city, every visitor that comes off the boat calls Greenock a city. This is a lovely city, and the things you get, the quotes you get at their Facebook and all that, tell you about the people in this area and how even if they don't understand them, they still try to help them. And I think it's great. And you know my views in Inverclyde and Greenock. It's a great place to be. The people in it are very helpful. Aye, you've got the good, the bad, and the ugly. You've got them everywhere, you know. But seriously, I mean, why shouldn't we turn around and promote Inverclyde and Greenock as the best place in Scotland as far as we're concerned and what the tourists tell us? So if that gets us publicity and we get it, then we're in there, and it's up to us to make it work and make it go better and get people to appreciate what we have done through the years. Thanks.
Thanks, Janet. The other Jim Clockerty wants to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I suppose my first comment is you are disappointed with the results of the population, you know, so it gives us a view of how the population see Greenock and how the population see ourselves as custodians, as councillors. And that is a wee bit disappointing. I've got to admit that. And we have got to take the views of our population on light, you know, when we're doing decisions. And we do that every budget time we do it. But we're here to make decisions as well. And for me, you know, I've been in, you know, at the centre of town, I've been interviewed with regard to our worst SMID in Scotland. I've been, you know, we've done it with our high suicide rates, our high alcoholism rates. And you know that sometimes you just want to actually say to people, this is a fantastic place. You know, Greenock is a fantastic place to live. And what we'll actually want to do is we want to show the positives of Greenock as well. And if all we do through this process is show the positives of Greenock, then we have not failed. And maybe we want to say to our population as well is, you know, it is a great place. It is a good place to live, and try and be a wee bit more positive about the place that you live in. We do know, you know, people are going to say to us about, you know, we've all had it about the Oak Mall, about the town centre. We know that. we are custodians for a short period of time as a councillors. Some of us might not be here after next May, but just now we've got an opportunity to actually say something positive about Greenock, and I would wholeheartedly support this effort for Greenock, but we should remember Greenock is the major town within Inverclyde, so it will reflect well in the whole Inverclyde as well. So again, very similar to Robert, I would wholeheartedly agree that we should, and I'm really delighted, like a man for Port Glasgow like yourself, Stephen, is wholeheartedly behind this too. So I would recommend we support a Greenock bid to have city states.
I don't think I've made any comments so far, Councillor, because I don't know how you drew that particular conclusion. It seems to me all sons of Greenock who are queuing up to back the bid at this point in time. Christopher, are you a son of Greenock as well?
I do live in Greenock, but I wouldn't classify myself as a son of Greenock, I have to say. So since I've been married, effectively I've lived in Greenock for the last 21 years. So maybe they might accept me to have some sort of statement on it. I suppose I have to say I share some of the scepticism that's maybe been, what do you call it, represented by the commentaries and the results of the survey. And I'm just trying to figure out where does this sort of scepticism on behalf of the sort of population of Inverclyde, because I presume that the survey was done throughout the whole of Inverclyde, not just Greenock, where it comes from. I suppose, from my view, I suppose this bid that has come a little bit out of left field. It's fair to say it's not been a part of a long-term strategy. I think the report refers to Southend, where Southend's had a campaign for 40 years. They've been working towards this. It's been demonstrating why there should be a city for that period of time, and obviously developing their bids for a period of time to actually become a city, and also and maybe showcasing projects and showing opportunities that they'll be able to, what they call it, to develop. And I suppose I think maybe where a lot of scepticism comes from with respect to this, because it just seems to be like, oh, it's there, let's do it, as opposed to being part of a long-term strategy. And I think if it was probably part of a long-term strategy, a 10-year, 15-year plan for Inverclyde, for Greenock, etc., then I think people would probably have a bit more of a buy-in from it. And I think that's probably where my scepticism comes from with respect to it. I am ambitious to try and make the best for Greenock and for the rest of Inverclyde. And I think it's how we demonstrate that, what we call it, desire. If this bid can be part of that, yes, I think it's probably something we should do. The effort's there. I suppose it's already been done by officers, but I think it's maybe we should maybe look at in the future how we can develop these longer term strategies so that people can see what our plan is, what we want to do, what our view is. Because I suppose we could have looked at it 10 years ago. We said, okay, we've missed out last 10 years when it was the Queen's 60th Jubilee. I'm just trying to count back. We could have said, well, there's a good chance, what they call it, there could be another one in 10 years' time. So let's plan towards getting a city status in 10 years' time. But we haven't done that. So I think that's probably where the scepticism comes from. It's sort of like we haven't been able to bring our population along with us in this one. So I think it's beholden on us as elected representatives, if we do decide to go for this, to fit it into a longer term strategy for Inverclyde, developing Inverclyde and regenerating Inverclyde and Greenock.
Okay, are you supporting it, what, Chris? With those reservations?
I'm just looking to see. Jim is proud to be a branch. I can never understand that statement. Maybe that's proves I'm not from here.
He's proud to be a branch of the green oak tree, and being a Port Glasgow man, I even know that. Okay, Jim McElhinney, I think, wants to come back in.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Clotterty's proud to be a branch aspect. The green oak tree is one of my many party pieces when it comes
right
to
on you go, Jim.
songs of old. So one of the lines is Greenup's not a bonny tune. Then I thought, oh, how can I change the words if it's Greenup's not a bonny city? And then I thought, well, what about Glasgow? I belong to Glasgow, Glasgow town, so it's all okay for them, it's okay for us. The final point I wanted to make was regarding the report regarding James Watt. He's so famous that his name is in every room in every house of the developed world, whether it be a 25 watt 60 watt, 100 watt bulb, etc. So yeah, we're right to celebrate it and go for this.
Okay, I'll bring a son of Glasgow in now.
Yeah, thank you, convener. I'm not a son of Greenock. I've been very encouraged with what I've heard in the last sort of 15 minutes, because to be honest with you, I know we've got poverty and deprivation, but we talk too much about it. It dominates so many of our committee meetings, and today we've heard a lot about poverty throughout what we've been talking about. I think there are a lot of good things in Greenock, a lot of good things in Inverclyde, and I think that's really what we should be stressing. And for the last 15 minutes, I've heard people stressing the good things. And as somebody who doesn't live in Greenock, my support is with the bid for city status.
Okay, thanks for that, David. Charlotte, you want to go on again?
If you want to promote Greenock, go to the 1991 tall ships. 1999 tall ships. I had my own sister who was away on holiday, couldn't believe the sunshine we had, the way the people were about. And if you go to the police records, not one person was lifted for 4 days, either been drunk or anything else. Everybody enjoyed it. And people that came from out with the area thought how great it was, the whole atmosphere and all the ships. And that showed us up in a great light. Even at the finish, it was a great march past and everything else. I think it's a good advert for our area. That's all. And by the way, Jim, just remember, the old tree can get cut down, so watch yourself. You might be out before me.
The tall shots wasn't quite as good when we put Councillor Wilson in charge with both.
And it wasn't quite the weather when I was in charge.
Well, it was your fault. You were never got the weather, wasn't it?
But Lulu was good.
That's true. That's true. Okay. I don't see any other Elizabeth wants to come in. Right, okay, Elizabeth.
Thanks. I'm at the point in the meeting where I've lost my cursor on the screen, so I can't put anything in the chat function, so I'll need to wave vigorously at this from here on in. I just thought you might want to hear from my daughter of Greenock as well as all the sons.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. I would still love this to be the catalyst for something about sustained ambition. I would still love it to be the reason that I get my special ops team that I've been shouting and bawling about, the team that are set aside to really take advantage of all the things that are yet to come, the team that 10 years ago would have looked at the what's 60 years, what's that the diamond jubilee, and looked ahead for the 10 years to the platinum one. I would still like it to be that. I'm never going to stop asking for it. This is possibly not the right time to get it. I think we're probably going to go ahead with this as it is, and I understand from conversations with George that it's quite a modest, really what we've presented here is the application. There's not much more to it than that, but I'm still going to put my plea out for that ambitious team to help us do this kind of thing on a more sustained basis going forward. But and the final thing I would say is I think we do have a job of work to make sure that the people of Inverclyde, who perhaps because they do experience poverty on a daily basis, don't feel the same way about Inverclyde as we're expressing in this application. And I think it's really important that we harness as a council both the ambition and also the understanding and compassion of what our people are going through. So that's the contribution of a daughter.
Thank you very much, daughter. Okay, any other comments? George, do you want to come back and pick up any points that you've heard discussion?
No, I think all very fair and upbeat contributions, and I think Councillor Curley's contribution maybe highlights some of the expectations that people have had in the past when they've heard about big European and UK City of Culture bids, which maybe dominate the landscape and do involve a lot of work and a lot of teams and a lot of investment. And maybe the message hasn't got across to the public that this process is very, very light touch. And in fact, the latest round of the UK City of Culture bidding process, which is obviously separate to this, has also been made very light touch to avoid councils incurring additional expense. So I think maybe lost in translation has been that message to the community that actually this doesn't involve a great deal of work, but does present an opportunity to promote the area.
Okay, thanks for that, George. Any other comments? No? Okay, are we happy to support the recommendation in the report? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's great. So that brings us to the end of public business. So I'll move the appropriate resolution to exclude members of the public and press. And if we could get that